All right, welcome everybody. What's up? How's it going? Thank you for being here. This is Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti, and this is episode 108. My guest tonight is Andy Smith. He's come back. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about learning to draw comics and the art of penciling. He's got a book out right now on Indiegogo called Nice and Tight Comic Book Pencils by Andy Smith. Go check that out. The link is in the description of the show, along with the link to Andy's YouTube as well. If you're not subscribed, go check it out. All right, before we begin, I want to say hello to those of you in the chat. We have many of you here, which is great. Thank you. Unhinged says 3. 3. Indeed. The number after 2, but before 4. 3. It's like a Sesame Street. Ara Galenian, what's up, Ara? Hope you're doing well. Andy Gogo is here too. What's up, Andy Gogo? Spaceman coming on down from above. What's up, Spaceman? Dr. Mask is here too. What's up, Doc? What Geeks Do Network? Is A Comic Book Radio excited for the show? Thank you, What Geeks Do Network. Appreciate that. Pastmaster Dan in the house as well. What's up, Pastmaster? Marcus Kellegrew, hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here tonight. Bretsky the Great is in the house as well. What's up, Bretsky? Fritzy Schnitzel is here. And the Beam Pad as well. What's up, guys? Hope you're doing well. We also have, let's see here. I want to say hello to those in the chat before we get started. But man, oh man. Grape Nuka-Cola. What's up, Grape Nuka-Cola? Hope you're doing good. Thank you for being here tonight. Shrek PMC in the house. How you doing? Thank you. We also have Holy Hand Grenades is here too. How's it going? Thanks for being here. Word Wizard, Captain Infinity. One of these days, StreamYard will fix that. I don't know what's he putting out there. I don't know what you're putting because StreamYard won't show me. But thank you for being here, Word Wizard. Appreciate it. Bobo is here too. What's up, Bobo? Thank you for showing up tonight. Cole King also. What's up, Cole King? Thank you. Hyrule Guy. How's it going, Hyrule Guy? All right, so without further ado, let's bring on the man of the hour. We got about an hour or so with him, actually. Maybe a little bit more. We'll see where the conversation takes us. And that would be one Mr. Andy Smith. What's up, Andy?
What's up, man? How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm good. By the way, in your intro with that Sly Stallone from Rocky 4, I can't remember the number, but I don't know if you have
the
Netflix.
Rocky Balboa? Yeah.
Yeah. If you have Netflix and you like Sly Stallone, I highly recommend watching Sly, the documentary. It is awesome.
Yeah, I've been seeing him talking about that on his Instagram and talking about how much it really did such a great job, and he even kind of didn't think he was going to be going to places and opening up the way that he did. So it's always a good, it's always an interesting interview and a good time diving deep into the life of Sylvester Stallone. I got to check that out. He just
seems like I haven't really seen much, I guess, behind the scenes stuff about him, except for like this documentary. I mean, maybe interviews on Entertainment Tonight and crap like that back in the day. But this documentary, I mean, he just seems like a really good, down-to-earth type of guy. So,
yeah, there's a couple of really good interviews from back when Rocky first came out. One of them he was on, the name is eluding me. He was on BBC. It was oh man, who was the dude? Who was the dude? I can't remember
BBC,
it.
I don't know back then.
I remember the guy. The name's on the tip of my tongue. The dude was on of all things, the first place I ever saw him. He had a cameo part, a little part. He was in Beetlejuice. And not Robert Goulet. But man, do you guys in the chat, someone has to know who I'm talking about. If you remember the scene in Beetlejuice where it's Delia's agent, her art agent, and he used to have a talk show. It was back in the day. I can't
Yeah,
even.
well,
It's eluding me. Someone in the chat's gonna get it though. But
somebody will
yeah,
pop it up.
Stallone did really well on that, and he was only like 30 or something at the time. Very, very well spoken, and had a lot to say about not just why he made the movie, but also stuff that was going on at the time in the movie industry. It reminds me a lot of what we're seeing today. He was talking
Hmm.
a lot about how he wanted to put that movie out there and that story because it felt like everything was so negative and in such a weird place, anti everything.
Hmm.
And he wanted like a positive, like something for people. Dick Cavett. There it is. Dick Cavett.
Oh, Dick Cavett.
Right on
Okay,
the tip
I
of
didn't
my
know he
tongue.
was a UK guy.
Yeah, it was but yeah, it was I think it's a BBC at least like
Right.
stemmed interview. It's a weird thing, but I
Well,
don't think he's a
did you
UK guy,
know
but it was
that
Dick Cavett.
when he was first shopping Rocky around, he was, he'd get an offer and he'd go, okay, but I want to star in it. And they said no. And he kept
Yeah.
getting more money to
To
not
not be
star
it.
in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Netflix documentary, he said that I think it got up to $250,000, but no, we don't want you to star in it.
Yeah,
And he was
yeah.
like, nope, nope. So,
Yeah, they wanted like Robert Redford or something like that. They wanted all kinds of
yeah,
different people for it, and they were trying to pay him a lot to not be in it.
to not be in it. Well, and then the other thing I learned too is the first Rambo movie, First Blood, he was originally supposed to die in the end, which is a good thing he put his foot down on that because
Yeah,
there wouldn't be sequels.
like
But
the novel. Yeah,
yeah, because he said, look, we're doing a movie about a Vietnam vet, and there's going to be lots of vets that are going to come see this movie. And I mean, think about it, it's early 80s, so it's not that far away from when Vietnam ended. And he's like, you can't have the hero die. Not for what these guys went through and stuff and the garbage they got thrown at them and all that. You can't do it. So then fast forward to the last Rambo movie that was just a few years ago, right? I don't know if you saw that one.
yeah, I saw that.
Okay, so it ends where he walks back up to, the house, and there's a rocking chair on the porch, and he sits in it and he starts rocking, and the camera pulls back. Well, originally when the camera pulled back, the chair was supposed to stop, or they did have it stop to indicate he died. And once again, Sly was like, no, you can't, no. So they actually CG'd it so the chair kept rocking, and that's how it ended.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a better ending. I mean, everything is so finite with these endings. A lot of the time, it's like they die. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And they don't have like these characters don't have to die necessarily. They could just as an audience, you could participate in the imagination of what it would. Okay, now hopefully there's better
Yeah.
days to come. That kind of a thing,
Exactly.
or whatever. But yeah, I like how he's fought a lot to maintain integrity with the characters and the films that he's done for the most part, especially when he's had control. There's always times when you can't. But again, I mean, I love Stallone, but we got you on tonight. Maybe one day I'll
Sure.
have Sly on, but not for now. Tonight we have Andy Smith, and we're going to be talking about learning to draw because I'm very curious about the book you currently have out because you're showing a lot of your pencil work from over the years. Made me start thinking about how I got into comics and what got me into drawing, writing, etc., going from someone who enjoyed them to someone who wanted to make them. And I started really wondering about the same process for you, too. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, I got into them, when I was a kid, 1982 or so. I always, the story is basically I was always walked by a 7-Eleven, convenience store on the way home from school. And, we almost every day, we always probably walked in just to get a candy bar or something. Or I remember they had Donkey Kong and Galaga, we popped quarters down. But it was just this one time. It was the one, this one issue because, you'd walk in the front doors, the double doors, and there was the counter, and right in front of the counter was the height of the counter, so whatever that is. But it was about four shelves, the width of the counter, and it was the magazine rack. But to the right hand side, it was just a little space for comics, and they were always there. But it was just this one time I can remember glancing down, and it was Captain America 275. It was just a shot of Captain America coming at you with his shield and bullets coming at him. But the background was just this yellow that was supposed to be a wall because bullets were like ricocheting off of it and stuff. And just the colors of the cover just made it really pop. And I just picked it up and looked at the first page and was just like, holy crap, this is awesome. And, it was 60 cents back then. So I probably forego a couple of the video games and pop down, three-quarters for the comic instead. And, I just fell in love with it. And I was already, always drawing because I like to say that every kid, once they can pick up a pencil or crayon, whatever, 2 years old, will draw. But the difference between most people, I guess, and us is we never put it down. Whereas I use my daughter as an example. She's 20. As she was growing, she was 2 years old. I had a little like play school, Playmobil, whatever, plastic desk that she would sit at and stuff. But then, 3, 4 years old, whatever it was, as she learned to do other things, she was like, yeah, I'm done with that, But we don't. It's just something in us that, we have to do it. We have to draw, we have to create. And when I discovered comics, I was like 12, 13, but, obviously it had credits and somebody had to do it. And I was like, I want to do this. The stories were just captivating. The biggest video game back then for home use was the Atari. So it's like Pong. So it's not like the graphics were mind blowing to where I'm like, screw comics. I just want to look at this little ball and these dashes as it bounces up and down, So, comics was the best thing. That and Saturday morning cartoons. And I knew enough with the cartoons without even being told, by anybody that, well, if you're going to draw cartoons, let's say Scooby-Doo or even better, Bugs Bunny on Saturday morning, I knew enough that you had to draw from a model sheet. I didn't know it was called a model sheet, but I knew you had to Bugs Bunny had to look like Bugs Bunny no matter if I did it, you did it, that guy did it. But in comics, you saw the different styles and stuff. So it was like, well, I'd rather do this.
Yeah, even if, especially at that time, even if they were similar, they were still different. Especially the more you looked into the various issues.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself being, I was going to say being drawn to drawing. Let's just go with that. Did you find yourself being drawn to drawing something specific? Any kind of subject matter in particular, a character that really spoke to you that you enjoyed drawing?
Well, before I discovered comics, I would literally just draw cars. I collected Hot Wheels. I collected Matchbox. My dad had some die-cast cars left over from when he was a kid, and I got into it. And I thank my dad because he saved them all, and I still have them all in a back in the closet. Each car is literally wrapped, and basically like my dad did this, took like a paper towel and wrapped each car so they wouldn't bang together and get scratched.
That's awesome.
And I would draw cars. It sometimes starting young, it was just the side view of a car, just flat side view because it was the easiest thing. But once I discovered, comics and superheroes and stuff, I was just kind of switched over and basically drew superheroes. But I don't know if this definitely wasn't the case for Adam Hughes, because Adam was all about the ladies, as you could tell. I just drew superhero guys, Superman. I remember Iceman a lot because of the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon and his Amazing Friends. And I just drew superheroes. I don't think I started drawing women honestly until I went to the Kubert school after graduating high school, and it was just like, and you know, it wasn't. It was just I like drawing, you know, the superhero guys. I didn't have any interest in drawing like Wonder Woman
Yeah, I was
and stuff
always,
like that.
I don't know, I was always like kind of shy about drawing women. And
Yeah,
the reason I say that is because I felt like I was going to get made fun of. Because if you just start drawing, you know, powerful dudes, it's like, oh, look, that's cool, and they do this and they do that and
right.
whatever. But if you start drawing women when you're a kid, and you're accentuating certain things and whatnot, you know, and you're not going to probably draw them that great.
No, well,
Someone's
yeah,
going to
you're
come
right.
along and be like, what are you doing there? At least that
Yeah.
was kind of my friend group and my parents. But then
No, I mean
later
that's how it
on,
was. That's
I'd,
how it was when I was in high school and stuff. I
that's
think
for the
guys were
private
easy.
time.
Guys were easier to draw because you're a guy. You know,
Yeah, right?
you've got the reference right there. Women, on the other hand, were definitely tougher to draw. You know, and it was something when I went to the Kubert school that obviously I really focused on because going to that school, they wanted to make everybody a really well-rounded artist, not just in regards to drawing ability, but
Totally. Yeah.
just experimenting. Like we had a class every. So the Kubert school was 3 years, and it was two classes a day, so 10 classes a week. And some of the classes carried over for all 3 years. So you'd have like figure drawing one, that's first year, figure drawing two, figure drawing three, but then classes didn't. So like we in first year, we had a class on lettering, hand lettering, but that was just first year. That was it. It was basically learn it. And okay, the class gets replaced with maybe in second year a painting class,
Yeah.
but they wanted to try and cram as much in those 3 years as they possibly could. I mean, Joe told me during the interview, he goes, this is a full-time school because you go from like 8 to 2:30 every day. It's not like regular college where it's like I've got one class today for 45 minutes or whatever. So it was
Yeah,
five
yeah.
days a week, full time. And he said we try to pack 10 years worth of stuff into 3 years. And my parents even asked, well, what about, do students get part-time jobs and stuff? And Joe said, oh, of course, but it's just difficult because after, 7 hours of school, there's usually about 6 hours of homework. So you do that and a job, it's tough.
Yeah, so you were in there
So
as if you were already working at a studio in a
yeah,
way.
that's
The amount of
that.
hours
Well,
you're
that's
putting in.
that's kind of how they ran the assignments, even in your first year in basic drawing classes and stuff. All the teachers treated the assignments with the seriousness of they weren't a teacher, they were an art director, and this is what an art director expects, this is the deadline. If since we only had the class once a week, some assignments were due just the following week, but then some assignments were, okay, next week I want to see 5 thumbnails. Okay, the week after that I want to see this progression, and then this progression, and so on and so forth. And that's how they ran it. And I'm trying to tell my daughter that because she takes classes at a film school online, and some of the instructors are really tough, and she doesn't get it, which it is a difference coming out of high school. But I'm like, well, because they're treating it like it's a job, and they're
Yeah.
trying to treat it like they're your teacher, but they're also looking at it like I'm your boss, and this is what I expect. And that's how it was in Kubert school. So
That's good. I mean, that's going to prep you for what you have to eventually do in the
yeah,
field, which is the whole point of why you're supposed to be going to pay for that level of education, right?
yeah.
People that kind of
Well,
like, well, why don't they go easy on me? Go
you didn't
easy on
you
you is not
didn't
going to help you.
people like you didn't go out. You'd have Joe as a teacher, and I was lucky. I had Joe for second and third year. Obviously, when the school started, he taught all 3 years. But at some point, before I went, he dropped down to just second and third because the the attrition rate of people that dropped out from first year to second year was pretty big. So, for instance, my first year class had 105 students, whereas the second year class had, I think, like 60.
Mm.
And in the third year class, I think we had like 35 to 40. So I think Joe was just like, I'll teach second and third. I don't want to teach first because
There's a lot of people that don't even know if
yeah,
they want to.
I don't
be
want
there.
to deal with the non-serious types. But Joe was a really fast artist, as we all know. He wasn't Jack Kirby fast, but he was fast.
Oh yeah.
But he never tried to teach, you need to be as fast as me. But what he tried to teach, what he taught was, one, the deadline is the deadline. Obviously, people blow deadlines, but always be in communication with your editor. So in other words, if your deadline is 7 days out and you know for a fact you're not going to make it, don't wait to the day before to tell the editor. Tell them 7 days out. But he was also basically kind of about, and other teachers that worked in comics were this way too, which was, if you're doing pencils, and this is not, this is 88 to 91, so penciling back then was different from penciling in the 90s, early 2000s, and 5-6 years ago.
What was it
and what
like?
I mean by that is, penciling has gotten, a lot of guys now just do the whole ball of wax. But, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, pencilers were so freaking tight that it took them, you'd have a guy that's like, oh, I can only pencil 3 pages a week.
Right. Not to cut you off, but I'm gonna.
No.
What was it like in that time period, especially because it was kind of a upswing in terms of the comic industry and in terms of the styles going on? There were so many different changes. What was it like being in at that point in time, learning and going into? Were they showing you some of the stuff? Was it being encouraged? Was it being discouraged? What was the reaction like to a lot of the things that were occurring at that point?
No, it wasn't discouraged, but, a lot of the guys that taught there were older, Joe's age. And when I went, Joe was, late 60s or whatever. And I do remember one teacher, I had to do a splash page, and this was actually in lettering class in first year. And it could be a splash page of anything. All the assignment was more about the lettering and the title you made and whatever. So I did a Spider-Man swinging over a city. And I really whacked him out because McFarlane was on Spider-Man at the time. And I really dug that stuff. And the teacher thought it was cool. But, this guy's, 65, 70 years old, who the teacher was. And he's like, I don't know if a body can bend like that, though. But he didn't, nobody discouraged it. But I also remember another teacher where, these guys came from the school where it was a lot of feathering and rendering to show the form of the muscles and stuff. It wasn't really like solid blacks to show like the form. And I was doing stuff like that. And I remember one teacher going, yeah, I mean, I could see maybe doing it like this. And he put like tracing paper over it and did old school feathering. And he was like, because I think if you do like a solid black like that, it almost is, because it's such a solid hard black, it's almost like a hole, kind of gives that feeling, which I didn't see at all, but I'm also looking at modern stuff. Whereas,
it's way higher
this is
contrast
a guy
as opposed to,
he hasn't walked into a comic shop in how many years, so, but they never discouraged. I mean, Joe was always encouraging with whatever, you want to do and style and stuff. Because we had the variety of that in class. I mean, we had guys doing really underground looking work. Think the underground comics of the 80s.
Yeah.
That type of style, all the way up to, I guess like me and some other guys wanting to do, the more modern and, 1990 type stuff. So,
Now, in terms of what you were working on, Uh, there's all kinds of stuff we could talk about tonight, but I don't want to go over. This isn't a tutorial kind of interview in case anyone
right.
was tuning in and looking for like tutorial stuff. If anything, I would encourage you to go check out Andy's Indiegogo, and you can even just learn from observation too of what he's doing and kind of see. But I really want to talk into the other aspects of when you're learning to draw and learning especially to draw comics. There's all kinds of stuff that you have to take into consideration that you don't necessarily think about if you're just going to draw like a still life
Hmm.
or a landscape or even just a portrait or a person. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. Would you like to talk about some of those things that make the differences between comic book drawing and the compositions and the storytelling as opposed to just drawing whatever?
Well, I mean, the big thing is, and this goes back to the people dropping out from first to second year, is they didn't realize how hard it would be. Because you hear somebody say cartooning, and the first thing they think of is newspaper comic strips, which even those aren't easy to do. And, one of the things when it comes to comic books, compared to like, a landscape painter or architect, whatever, is a comic book artist has to be able to draw everything. I mean, literally everything. And you can't tell your editor. One of my first jobs out of the Kubert School, I had to draw a horse in one of the stories,
Mm.
and I drew a horse like maybe 3 or 4 times in the Kubert School, and that was it. You know, and you can't tell an editor, oh, wait a second here, this script says there's a horse. I don't know how to draw horses. They're not going to be like, well, here's a book or go learn. They're going to be like, okay, well, we'll just give the job to somebody else. So you've got to study composition, but then composition from the standpoint of a painting, one single illustration, whether it be a landscape, a portrait, whatever, while those rules can still apply for a panel, you also need to take into account, or at least I try to, yes, this composition works in this panel, but does it help me lead the eye to the panel next to it? Or does that panel help me lead the eye to the most important part of the panel below it? So it's not just thinking about the singular panel, it's thinking about the design of the whole page. And that's what Joe was really good about teaching and showing on leading the eye around the page with, subtle cues, whether it be a simple thing like, if you're going from a panel on the left to one on the right, maybe the horizon line takes you just right across, so, you could do a long shot in the first panel and the horizon line is, just this, I think I call it just the mid-level horizon. So say about five
Mm.
feet off the ground, right? If the person's 5 feet tall. So that long shot, it's 5 feet, whatever, but the next panel could be a close-up of a person or a medium shot, shoulders up, but the horizon line is the exact same. So the camera does move in tighter, so you get the feeling of movement that you
Yeah.
want in a static page, but you're still leading the eye to the next panel subconsciously because the horizon line is the exact same. So it gives you this horizontal to drag the eye across to the panel next to it. So you've got to think about stuff like that. And then, on that panel, if we're going with, say, it's a medium shot like you're seeing us framed here, and you're going to the panel below it, well, you could do something with the guy's head to where, I got to remember I'm backwards here. So, nope, wrong way. Like tilt like this. So the angle of the head could direct down to the panel
Yeah,
below
and
it.
the eye can still flow across the
Right. And it
page. The
flows down.
perspectives can change and shift. Use
Right.
foreshortening, all kinds of different compositions within, and then some things to the foreground, some things to the background. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of that goes into it. That doesn't just create a more interesting page, but it, like you said, it's all these subtle cues that help guide the eye through reading the story, and then hopefully your letterer comes in if you're not the letterer, and they help to frame and not here's some lettering
Well,
right on
that's
top
the,
of
you know,
the stuff
that's
that
the
you're
other
like,
nice
that's
part. Right. Well, and that's the other nice part about the Kubert School is the lettering class obviously was to learn lettering, but my hand lettering blows. Now it blows to somebody that is a letterer for a living. So in other words, I could hand letter something and show it to like my wife or somebody, and they'd be like, "Ooh, that looks nice." But then if I showed it to a professional letterer, they'd be like, "Stick to drawing the pretty pictures, pal. You're not quite there." So, but it's also in that class about composing panels and how much room you're supposed to leave
yeah,
and
that's the
stuff.
yeah.
And, 9 times out of 10, like when I got in the business, it was the editor that would take their original pages because we'd FedEx them up to the company and they'd take their blue pencil and they'd circle the balloon placement before they mailed them to the letterer, right? Which is kind of a slap in the face to the letterer, I think, because if you're Tom Orchid, I can never pronounce his last name. If you're John
Wojciechowski?
Workman, yeah, that's him. If you're him or John Workman, if you're the editor and you're circling the balloon placement, you must be a newbie because for those guys, they know what they're
Yeah.
doing. But that was, that's what the editor would do. But, 9 times out of 10, because of how I composed the panels and where I left the space, whether it was the letterer or the editor that figured out the placement, it was really easy for him because I was thinking about it while I composed the panel.
Yeah. It's
and
important
the
to
same.
keep that in mind too, even for yourself in terms of your workload, because you might be massively over designing aspects of that panel, of that shot, that are just going to end up getting covered.
Right, and that's the nice thing in the old days when it was hand lettered, the few jobs of mine that I was able to ink myself, because it was still being hand lettered, I'd send up my pencils and I'd get it back lettered to ink, right? So I might, kind of like you said, go, I know there's going to be some lettering here. This is full script, so I know it's going to be about this much space. I'll just kind of sketch in a background instead of taking lots of time. So then when the page came back, if I was right and the lettering took up a lot of it, I could just be like, there's no point to even have a background in this panel. Or I could be like, okay, I can tighten up some more,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Absolutely.
that helps. But
Yeah.
you've got to be the set designer as well. Because
Yep.
the writer might describe a scene, and depending on the writer, some writers would send reference along, like, this is what I'm thinking, but some won't. They'll just describe it. So now you've got to design the set.
Yeah,
as
and that's
well.
the thing. I mean, going back to what you were talking about, where in comics you gotta know how to draw everything. You're not just drawing the main character. You're not just drawing their supporting cast. You're drawing. You're the architect. You're a landscape artist. You're a fashion designer.
Well, and that goes back to like, I would like if somebody asked me, and people still do, what should be my sample pages to try and get a job as an artist. I mean, I would tell them what I was told 30 years ago, which is, 4 pages max. You don't need to do more than 4 pages. If, as an editor, I can tell if you can tell a story in 4 pages. Don't do any splash pages. Don't care. Don't want to see a splash page. Draw, obviously for sample pages. If you don't like drawing, Conan, then don't do Conan sample pages. Draw sample pages for what you want to draw. So,
Yeah.
if you want to draw superheroes, pick a hero for the company, you're pitching to, or you're doing samples for. So say Superman, out of the 4 pages, yes, you want to have an action scene with Superman, but you want to have a quiet scene with Superman, with Clark and Lois, at the Daily Planet. The basic gist I was told is show that you can draw the hero, show that you can draw real people and real clothes. And I did this in my sample pages, show that you can draw other living creatures. So like I had a cat on the street, in one of my sample pages just to go, look, I can draw a cat, draw a variety of backgrounds in the 4 pages, and that's it. You just need 4 pages. You don't, people come up to me, you've probably seen it as well. Can you look at my portfolio? Sure. And it's like plop, and it's like thick, and you're like, I'm like, what's the newest stuff in here? Well, it's that. Nah, that's all I'm going to look at. If somebody comes up and they're like, well, that's 6 months old, my reaction, honestly, is always, why is that even in here? Have you not gotten better in 6 months?
Or have you not even drawn anything in 6 months?
Right.
Yeah.
Or, and if that's the case,
I've seen things that's like, that's 5 years ago. And I'm like, why is that in there then?
Right. And
5
honestly,
years.
I tell them, and most editors probably wouldn't be as nice. And that's where I think showing to an artist, I think we're nicer about it, is I'll say, don't tell me that. If you've got 3 pages here that are like a month old and then 3 more pages that are 6 months old, if there's not like a huge difference in them, don't tell me. You do, I use the term of you're just loading the gun. And they look at me like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, you're literally loading the gun so I can shoot you down. You just told me this is 6 months old. Bang. Why would you tell me that? Don't offer up information unless I ask. If I'm not asking, just stand there and be quiet.
Solid advice in many scenarios of life.
Exactly.
Don't answer the questions that haven't been asked yet.
Right.
Right. So going into your progression as an artist and what you're finding as you get into the professional stage of it. You're getting outside, obviously, we're talking about no more Kubert school, none of that. In terms of your skill set, in terms of what you needed to learn, in terms of even getting into the industry, and I don't mean breaking in or contacting people or anything like that, but more about working on the books. For you, what was the biggest thing that made you go, man, this is crazy. This is maybe even, did you have any moments where you go, this is kind of tougher than what they prepared me for in school?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the first few years. Because in school, the most I would do continuity wise was 4 pages. That was it. I mean, we had one teacher that he had big hopes in the beginning of 3rd year, so our senior year. He was like, by the end of this year, so 9-month school year, you're going to draw a 20-page book. It's going to be full colored, lettered, everything. And we were just like, okay. I mean, no, I don't think anybody did. And I think he realized that was just way too lofty. But so, yeah, I mean, my very first job, it was a 22-page comic book. I never drew 22 pages. I drew 4. And I was under the mindset, and this goes back to Joe, of a penciler should be able to draw 1 page a day. If you're an inker, you should be able to ink 1.5 pages a day. If you're a hand letterer, you should be able to letter basically 10 pages a day. And coloring back then was, the old school Dr. Martin dyes on Xeroxes. It was all coding and stuff. And that's like doing same thing, 10 pages a day. So I was like, okay, I draw a page a day. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Doesn't matter if it takes me 24 hours. Looks like I'm not sleeping. And it was gathering reference. It was just the pressure of, they say getting your first job is hard, but getting your second job is harder, because if you shit the bed on your first job, you're showing your stuff around and you're not 100%. Getting work, then something's wrong. So luckily that wasn't the case. I guess I succeeded on the first job because I did get a second one. I've always had work. I think the longest I've gone between is maybe 2 or 3 weeks when I was working in the mainstream between jobs. So it was just sitting down, staring at the blank page, having the official real script in front of me, and just trying not to second guess yourself as you're doing it. Because
Did
once
you ever
again,
feel? I mean, we see this a lot right now, everywhere, not just in comics. Did you ever feel like, and this was your attitude, and I'm gonna guess it wasn't, but maybe you did. Did you ever feel like I'm not really getting paid what I think I'm worth? I'm not really working on that book that I think I should work on. I'm gonna kind of just phone it in. Did you ever have
oh
that
no,
attitude? Yeah, I
oh
thought you'd
no,
say no.
no. I mean, I can tell you when I started off, my page rate at DC was 90, I think, for pencils. And man, I tell you, I was thrilled. I moved back home to Maryland, and in 3 weeks I moved to Florida because a buddy lived there, and my parents were like, "Can you afford that? Are you sure you can afford it?" And now, granted, no cell phones, no internet, none of that. So the bills were basically uh, car payment, rent, electricity, phone, cable TV, and I didn't have a car payment. And the rest, I just said, well, if I draw 5 pages a week, that's $450 a week. Times four is this. This is my rent. This is this. This is this. I got this left over. I can move to Florida. So no, I never thought about it at all. I was like, wow, 90 a page. And I was friends with a few people in the industry before I got in, and I was like, yeah, this is what they offer me, and so I could get their feedback like, oh, that's crap, or oh, that's pretty good. And from the people I knew, they were like, that's a good starting rate. And I was like, okay. And I would ask, or I guess I would ask their advice on like, well, when do you ask for a raise and shit like that. And they go, oh, get a few under your belt, and ask for a raise, because worse than any work. And this is another one, kind of like loading the gun, that works for everything. Is the old saying, you don't know unless you ask. And the other piece of advice I tell people when it comes to anything is, the worst thing that can happen is they say no. The best thing they can say is, yes, we'll give you a raise, and it will be more than you expect, or whatever. So you should always ask. So no, I never once on any job was like, yeah, this is a load of crap. They should be paying me more. I wasn't also at the same time like, oh, thank you, sir, for giving me work. Oh, thank you for the pittance. I, I mean, there's the
Get
fine
back
line
to
of,
work, Cratchit.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's the fine line of, you don't want to be the egotistical maniac,
Yep.
but you don't want to be the guy that gets walked over too. You got to have confidence in what you do. And this goes back to, I think, what's he say? Oh, EXO? I can think about it. I've got most of the covers I did for EXO still. Um, yeah, I mean, there is a fine line. I mean, I always half jokingly say, my self confidence isn't through the roof, but at the same time, you kind of have to put that on the back burner and just know what you can do and back it up. And I think as long as you can back it up, then you're not
Exactly.
being overconfident. You're not being braggadocious or whatever.
And that's the
You
that's
know.
the catch 22. If you're doing work where you're phoning it in, you're never gonna point to it and go, "I'm worthy of more." And they go, "No, you're not. You're worthy of less."
Right, and that's the thing. I did one job I remember for Marvel when I first started working for Marvel. Because I started at DC, then I went to Marvel like a year later or something. And hello, and they said, it was an issue of Warlock or something, and they needed it really quick. And I said, well, I can do breakdowns instead of full pencils, because I could do those obviously faster, because they're looser. And they're like, okay. So I think I did the whole book in like, week and a half, 2 weeks. 22 pages, whatever it was. But it was just breakdowns.
Yeah.
And I think that was the last time I ever did something like that. not breakdowns, but just something that quick. Because one, I wasn't thrilled with the finishes I got, and I knew it was a rush job, so it's not like they told the finisher, take your time. I mean, it was a rush job. And, there's that old saying, and I don't know if I knew it at the time, and if I didn't, I learned it shortly thereafter, which is you're only as good as your last job. So, yeah, that editor knew that I was getting it done because he asked me to get it done and said, look, if you can do it in 2 weeks, that's great. But the problem is I couldn't use that job to show other editors because I would be saying, but no, the editor wanted it in 2 weeks. So this is what I did. Because unless they spoke to that editor, whoever I'm telling that to could be like, sure. This is what you're just going to give me.
Yeah.
So I don't think I used that job for anything. I would use the job before it as
smart.
So from that point, I wouldn't do like, I'm sure you've talked to artists and stuff that are like, oh, I've done this many all-nighters, blah, blah, blah. I can count how many all-nighters I've done in 32 years on one hand. Hell, I can take 2 fingers down and count it. Oh, wait, 2. I swear to God, I think I've maybe only done one all-nighter.
Were you always that good at your time management and things like that? Were you always good with that? I know a lot of artists really suffer from that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point to. It's time management. It's, I've talked to some guys that are friends that are like, oh, I start working at 3 in the afternoon and I'll work till 3 in the morning. And I'm like, okay, that's 12 hours. Why wouldn't you just work from 7 to 7? 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And, when I moved to Florida, I knew 2 other comic book artists in town, and that's who I shared a studio with. And one of them was one of the crazy ones with shitty time management, and another one had, good time management. But the biggest point is, besides those 2 friends, I had other friends, but they had real jobs. When I say that, I mean, 9 to 5. And I realized, I was 21, 22 years old, and I realized, well, if I want to be able to hang out, and I was single, so if I want to have a life and be able to hang out at night and go to bars and stuff, whatever, I'm going to work 9 to 5 or, 7 to 5, whatever. So that's what I tried to do because I wanted to have weekends off because I didn't want to be, I'm living in Orlando. I didn't want to be like my buddies that have weekends off going, oh, we're going to the beach, we're doing this, and be like, well, I fucked off during the week. I got to work all day Saturday and Sunday. Have fun, guys. So I would basically
good use of the F-bomb there. You get one. You get one.
Okay.
It's a good use of it.
PG-13 show. I get it. So I would start work kind of like I try to do now, which is around 7:30, and try to be done around 5, 6 o'clock. Now, once again, if it really does dictate what's on the page, because I would turn down jobs if the editor was like, hey, I got this 20-page book. I'm like, okay, sweet. What's the deadline? And if they're like 2.5 weeks, I'd go, oh yeah, no, I can't do that. And they're like, really? And I'm like, no, I'd do the math. I go, 2.5 weeks. So what's that? Basically, because I never counted weekends. So I'd go, well, 2.5 weeks is 12 days. I'd go, I can do 12 of it if you want to split it up. And sometimes I did. And sometimes they'd go, no, we're going to have to find somebody. We don't want to split it up. I'd go, okay. Because I was like, look, guys, I tell them straight out, I can do a page a day. If this is what you want, this is the work you're hiring me from this previous job, that was a page a day. So that's what I can do. Because I'm not going to sacrifice the quality of the work because it might help you out, but it doesn't help me out because you're only as good as your last job.
Yeah. So now you've got something and you're like, I can't show that.
Right. So, and once again, the page a day could be start at 7, finish at 10 p.m. at night because it's a ball buster of a page.
Yeah.
Or it could be, and that's the thing I liked about monthly books is on a monthly book, you had let's say they were 22 pages. Now I think they're 20, but you had that give and take. So you'd have a page that would take 6 hours, sometimes maybe five. And on a good, on a really simple page, maybe four. And you'd feel really good, like, ooh, I did that in four. And early in my career, I'd be like, okay, I want to clock out for the rest of the day. And I would. It'd be like noon. And I'd be like, I'm done. Go see a movie or something. But then the next day, it would be Murphy's Law going, I'm going to kick you in the balls. And it's 10 o'clock at night. And I'm just finishing the page. And I'm like, damn, I should have kept working yesterday. So you learn quick to go, well, I finished this page at 1 in the afternoon. I'm not leaving. Script, turn, next page, let's start. So, to try and keep the weekends off and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't put yourself in that predicament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good advice. Good advice, Andy. This is
It's
great.
a balancing act. And, I got married in 95, so I was in the business for like 4 years at that time. And then, you get married and my wife's a 9-to-5er, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to work at night unless I absolutely have to, because she gets home and I don't want to be up here or in my office working. I'd rather spend time with my wife. So, yeah, there are times I'd work till 10 at night or 9 or 7 or eat dinner and come back up. But once again, I try to keep those few and far between because I want to have a life.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's tough, especially the more that people are, I think, becoming not just compartmentalized with what they're doing in comics, where, you're not just a penciler or an inker or a letterer or a colorist or whatever, but you're becoming an entrepreneur. So that's a whole other aspect of it too, where now you're like a one-man band, you're a one-man army here doing a lot of stuff. And then also on top of it, not just the creative, literally what you're doing right now, you're also getting out there, marketing in some way, shape, or form, spreading awareness of what you're doing and who you are and what you're about. So there's all kinds of facets to that. Was that a really difficult adjustment for you, or is that something that you found was easier than you thought it would be?
Oh no, it was a big adjustment. I'm not good at I'm better at it, but I'm not good at multitasking in regards to jobs and stuff. I'm a very as you could probably tell, I'm very regimented with scheduling and stuff. So when I'm working on the book, so when I was working on Cordrath, it was very regimented, like I've got to do this much work a week. So if that sacrifices streaming or something, I'll sacrifice it, but I still have to do a certain amount for, promotion and just, kind of like this, just, talking to the fans and stuff and having a presence, and then, the behind the scenes stuff of doing social posting and stuff like that. So because I'm more, I don't know if creative is the right word, but I'm a morning person. I get it. I know people. My daughter's a night person. I'm a morning person. So for the creative aspect of doing the actual drawing and stuff for a book, if I can do that from 7:30 to like 1 in the afternoon, perfect. Because then at that point, my mind is kind of switching over to, okay, let's get on the computer and do any social stuff I have to do, or pre-records for videos or whatever, So I like to regiment it that way instead of like just different every day. It's the OCD. I got to have a nice schedule and stuff. So, but it is harder. People ask, is this more rewarding? And it is, but it's a lot harder because, working for the man will say it was, okay, I know I make this much per page. I draw one a day. I come up here, I sit at my desk. It's
more
pop
simplified.
to the next script page, thumbnail it, draw it, day's over.
Yeah. And I don't mean it's like simple or easy. It's just a simplified kind of thing. as
Yeah, yeah.
opposed to you're like, well, which part of the company is working right now and which part
Right.
closes?
Right. Well, yeah, because I mean, you know how it is. You know, and you write as well. I don't write as much. Dennis and I have, I guess you could say, story collaboration meetings or whatever. And meetings. Not, I mean, that sounds too highfalutin. It's more like a phone call, just chatting about stuff. But it's still, I'm the guy that approves, all the coloring, lettering. I mean, yeah, Dennis looks at it, of course, but the stuff that I go, yeah. So with the colorist, I sent him these notes. He's just like, sounds good. you know, it would have to be really glaring, I think, for Dennis to go, well, that's just effed up. I mean, I'll change stuff in the lettering or the coloring, and he'll be like, oh, yeah, that does work better. But, it's just not his realm. It's not his area of expertise and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No, I hear you. Kelraiser, thank you for the $1.99. Says Andy, was that pencils for a page today? I
I
don't know what
don't
that means.
quite understand the question. Try to
Uh,
elaborate on that, and we'll keep
yeah,
an eye out on the chat to see, so you don't have to do another
indeed.
super chat. But because I
I'm
I don't understand the question. Was that pencils for a page today?
I'm thinking. Does that mean that you did? If you did that, did you make your pencils for the day? But I also don't know. I don't want to
No,
twist the words of
no, because I
Kelraiser. So
pencil and
yeah,
ink now, so it's not really. I mean, now, if this was kind of what he's asking, it's pencils, and then my goal now is to get some ink on the page before my day's over, because I don't have to pencil as tight because I'm inking it myself. So to me,
gotcha.
a successful day is having some ink on the page, even if it's just the panel borders, and that's it. So then the next day I can come up here and put the inking hat on.
Let's see. Kelraiser says, "Sorry, man, that was supposed to be a day instead of 2 day." So Andy was at pencils for a page a day. So back in the
Uh,
day, you did. It was just pencils
yeah, it was just
on the art.
pencils. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once I started getting more comfortable inking myself, I would usually tell the editors, if an editor was like, this was my pitch. If they were like, hey, can you pencil this 20-page book and do it in, 5 pages a week, right?
Mm,
Which is fine. That's a page a day. I'd go, well, do you have an inker yet? And I'd always ask it like that instead of saying, well, I want to ink it. Because if they had an inker, I don't want to take work away from somebody.
yeah, yeah.
So I always say, well, do you have an inker lined up? And if they said, yeah, I'd be like, cool, who is it? And then just drop it. But if they're like, no, why? Do you have somebody in mind? I'd say, well, instead of 5 pages a week of pencils, how would you feel about 3 to 4 pages a week of pencils and inks? Because then, with everything being electronic and scanning and stuff, most of the time they'd go, oh, yeah, that sounds
And
good.
do you prefer to ink your pencils?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because I don't have to pencil as tight, but the rate doesn't change for the company. They don't go, oh, for Marvel and DC at least, they don't say, well, since you're penciling and inking, you know, it's not, here's your ink rate and your pencil rate. Well, it is, here's your ink rate and pencil rate, and just add it together. They don't say, well, because you're not penciling as tight, you get this percentage less. That's not how it works. So it's advantageous. I make more doing pencils and inks 3 a week than I do a 5 a week of just pencils.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that.
So, yeah.
Was there someone, and you don't need necessarily to name names, but was there someone that inked your work, your pencils that you really liked, and someone that you didn't really like you thought they really just destroyed your pencil work?
Well, I've been really, I got to be honest, after my first couple jobs, I was really blessed. Mark Farmer, and I mean, there's not just one, there's a lot. I've had Mark Farmer ink me, who's famous for inking Alan Davis. I had John Dell ink me, Art to Bears ink me before. So I've had a range of really great inkers. Uh, I wouldn't say destroyed my work, but I mean, one of my first jobs for DC, or it was my first job. I was a rookie, literally first job being printed, and the inker was a guy named Carlos Garzon. And Carlos was an old school guy. And what I mean by that was Carlos used to work. Carlos was an inker in his own right back in the 60s and 70s over other pencilers. But then he also worked with Al Williamson. So Carlos was no slouch. But when Carlos was inking me, it's not that he was a slouch or hacking anything out. He was just older, you know. And it was like, hey, let's see what you do over this new guy. And it just wasn't, look, my pencils weren't like, oh my God, these are glorious by any means, being my first stuff. But there was definitely stuff he did where when I saw the pages, I was like, hey, So yeah, I mean, and once again, nothing bad about Carlos. Once again, he was just past his prime. That's all. That's really what it came down to. The one job I did the breakdowns on in, a week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. I can't remember who the finisher was, but once again, I know they were under the gun. Put it this way, if they gave me a week and a half to 2 weeks to draw the book, to do breakdowns, I'm sure he only got like a week, maybe 9 days to do finishes over all 20 pages or whatever. So whoever it was, I mean, look, it doesn't look great, but I'm not slighting him for it.
Yeah, sometimes the way that production schedule works out is just the way it works out.
Yeah, and that's when I learned not to do that again.
So I'd like to have you on for another half hour if you want to take some questions and people coming in here. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to put the link in the chat in case you guys do want to come in here with a question or comment for Andy. So there it is. You guys can join the show. Feel free. We'll take you one at a time. So I'm going to take a look right now at your Indiegogo campaign. Let's do that.
Oh, sure.
All right, so you got Nice and Tight comic book pencils by Andy Smith. Look at that. Very nice.
Yeah.
And tight.
And I got tip of the hat to a friend of mine that is usually in the chats. I haven't seen him yet, but I know his work schedule, so it's not surprising at this time of night for him. But I was telling him about the project, and he came up with Nice and Tight. And I was like, I want to use that. And he goes, are you serious? And I said, yes, that is awesome. Because it fits my personality.
Well,
I can never see Aaron Lopresti using that as a title for a book of his.
That's true, yeah. Well, it definitely fits your pencil work, too, that's for sure. You got this 52-page book here. 8.5 by 11 and 3/4 inches.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, so it's oversized. That's it. It could end up being, and I didn't put it down because I know for a fact it'll be that size, but it very well could be 9 by 12.
Yeah, it's very, very close to 9 by 12.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be any smaller than that size that I listed. I just didn't want to say 9 by 12 because, at this stage, you know how it is. Well, for me at least, at this stage of the process with the campaign, I'm not settled on a printer yet. But the one that I've got numbers from, that's the size. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. So you got a couple of different options on here, and you explore a bunch of your past work. Are there any specific tutorials within the book, or is it all just it's reproductions from your pencils from previous published work?
There are no tutorials in it, but that kind of gives me an idea for a possible stretch goal. That's why I like talking to people, because I get ideas. I could see so obviously one possible stretch goal would be adding pages. But now that I think about it, because I have scans of process, like here's the initial layout and then here's the finished pencils, I could see adding pages where it's like, this is the first step and this is the final.
That'd be
But
really
as
cool.
of now, it's just each page is just one. I'm picking basically the best of over the past from basically 2000 up into I think the last time I did full pencils for another company was 2015 or so. So,
Very nice, man. Johnny Slaction wants to know: is it too late? Absolutely too late to score Cordrath?
uh, it will be up. Obviously, we overprint as all of us do. So we overprinted. So once fulfillment is done, I will put up extras on the coredraft.com website. And when I do that, I'll send out like all the stuff, email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just to say, okay, extra copies are now available. So it's not too late because we definitely will have extras for sale.
Nice. So you
It's
might
just
do a
not
second
right. Like
chance
you can't pay
campaign
me
sort
right
of
now.
thing. Okay. So
Yeah.
keep your ear to the ground there, Johnny Slaction.
Follow me. Yeah.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Okay, so we got somebody waiting in the green room. Let's bring him on. We got Apex Comics. What's up? You're on Comic Book Radio with Andy Smith.
What's up?
Hey, Pete and Andy. Good to see
Hey,
you.
what's
it
First
going, man?
time. Good, man. Yeah, I've been drawing as well. Have you ever had Mark McKenna or Aaron Lepresti ink your work?
Mark inked. I know Mark. He inked a con sketch where I drew it, and then this was years ago. Mark, it was just the head and shoulder shot of Supergirl, and then
Right.
Mark inked it. And the only reason I knew was because he posted it and stuff. No actual pages though. Mark's never inked pages or anything. And Aaron, no. I mean, I'd love to see Aaron ink something I did because I'd rather actually for Aaron just do breakdowns so he could do the finishes because I think it'd be a nice combination.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I don't think Aaron, even in his career, has inked full pages over other people that I can think of. I'd have to ask him actually, but I'd like that. I think that'd be cool.
That'd be cool. Well, I inked this today. It's Fembat versus the Creep. Two of my
Nice.
characters. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. About an hour and a half to do, but
Nice.
it's been longer for other projects and stuff like that. All right. Cool. All right. Thanks,
Do you got
guys.
another question or comment for Andy? I'll give you two.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. What would be your next book after Cordrath?
Core Draft Volume 2. That's why I'm
Alright.
doing this campaign now is because I don't want to go. Core Draft Volume 2 won't launch until early spring of next year. And I just don't want to go that long without something out there. So, and I'm a huge fan of art books. I mean, I've got a big collection of art books back there. And instead of just doing a sketchbook that is pinups and commissions and stuff, I thought what would be different, and the book of just my pencils from previous jobs. Since there's some on my website, but the majority of my pencils have only been seen by inkers and editors. So
Guys. So you still have some of your instructional books on your website that you've done?
no, unfortunately, when it comes to drawing dynamic comics, I tell people just go to Amazon because it's been out of print now for a few years. So I think you can get it for like $3-4.
Dang.
But yeah, no, I mean, that's just it. They're used, so they're beat up, but they're complete. But yeah, I don't have any copies of the how-to books anymore.
Right. All right. Hey. Oh yeah, I've got the Can't Kill Cade. I'm missing number 4. So you have number 4 already?
Series got canceled at issue 3. They dropped the ball. I'm sorry.
Oh, dadgum. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Appreciate it though. Yeah, it happens. It's comics.
well, no doubt. All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you so much, Apex.
Sure. We'll see
Have
you
a
somewhere.
great
Thanks,
night,
man.
buddy.
You too. Bye.
All right. So if you guys want to join the show, you want to come on with a question or comment for Andy, please feel free to do so. There's a StreamYard link right there in the chat. Brian has a question for you. Says, will we get a second issue of Jungle Lords?
So that was actually something I was playing with when I was thinking of what I want to do next before the Nice and Tight. One of the ideas I had was to do not another full issue, because I wouldn't need a full 20 pages, standard comic to finish that initial story. I would only need about 10. But I chose the nice and tight because I thought instead of drawing 10 pages for Jungle Lords, I'd rather do 10 pages of core draft for volume 2 to get ahead of it. I do want to do that though, because I have it basically roughed out writing wise of how it would finish. So eventually, yes, there will be, but core draft volume 2 is what's going to be next. Maybe after core draft volume 2, once I have 2 of them out there.
Very nice. I'm Old Dirty Fatty.
It's tough. I'll just tell you. Sometimes I got to tell my wife, look, I get it. You got to go to work and you got to leave this for 8 hours. But you got to do it. I got to get work done. I can't have you up here all day Googling me and stuff, ogling me.
Right.
It's been 28 years. The fire is still there in her eyes. So,
It's just look at them, ladies and gentlemen. I mean,
I was the only guy that when they took down the mask mandates, I was like, great. Now when I go to the mall, girls are going to be fawning all over me because I don't have the mask on. What are you going to do?
It's your gift and your curse, Andy.
It is.
You just got to find a way.
I know.
You just got to find a way.
I know.
You're a strong dude, though. You'll get through it.
I will.
Brian says, cool, thank you. There you go. Bomax says, do you work on full scripts or Marvel method? So kind of like a retro scripting sort of thing.
Well, I've done both. For core draft, this is Dennis's first stab at writing comics, not short story prose like he's done before. So I gave him examples of both, and he just felt more comfortable full script. But going into it, I also let him know that's totally fine, but there could be a time where you might get the page when I'm done, and it might have less panels or it might have more. And that worked out. Not a lot throughout the book. I thought he actually did a really good job for his first time out. But there were pages where I was like, this will work better over 2 panels or 3. There hasn't been that many times in my career, even working at DC or Marvel with full scripts, where I've been able to go 2 panels. I can do it in 1. I think that's pretty rare. It's usually expanding on something than contracting.
Yeah.
But luckily, every writer I've worked with has always said, hey, man, if you want to change stuff up, go ahead, So I like either one. The last time I did Marvel method was with Chris Claremont on some X-Men Forever stuff, which was a thrill. So
very nice.
Yeah. Because everything can be moved,
Yeah. I like that method. That's what I do with King Cryptid. I give scene descriptions. I don't really give dialogue and caption breakdown and things like that. It's more about telling the story to the artist and then letting them interpret it. And then sometimes there's specifics, and I'll mention certain things like that, focus on this character, or here's a little line of dialogue that they'll be saying so you can capture the expression and the emotion. But it's really, I go in there still afterwards, and as a letterer on it, I'm able to make those adjustments. So it's a lot easier. I can only imagine if you got to then relay that to the letterer, where the script is basically like a set of instructions.
Even with full script, and I won't name any of the writers, but I've worked with writers that are just like, it's full script, I don't need to see it when it's done, send to the letterer. And I'm not talking, I'm talking working as in with Marvel and DC, because they're just like, well, I got paid for a full script, I did it, I don't need to see it again. I don't suggest that. And
I was going to say,
most of the writers generally, even if it's a full script, are like, no, I want it back so I can make sure everything pairs up nicely and I don't need to add or delete anything.
Yeah. Interesting. Art T. Bear, what's up, Art? Says Andrew is a blast to ink, and his new art book looks fantastic.
Thanks,
There
Art.
you
Checks
go.
in the mail.
And Art says, fun show as always, Pete. And Art, I was looking so forward to having you on this Friday, but Art has to cancel. He's got something that's come up. So we'll have to reschedule and have Art on another day. But yeah, that'll be a great show once we get around to it. So for all those that were looking forward.
Art scheduled his penile implant enlargement surgery for nighttime. You think that would be during the day? Oh,
Art,
oh,
I
is
didn't.
that not supposed to be told?
I didn't tell him, Art.
Oh,
I didn't tell him.
oops.
How'd you find out? I mean, that's not what he's doing.
No, he's getting a manicure that night, I think.
Lots of love for Art. Art's great. Let's see here. We got somebody in the green room here waiting, so we're going to bring him on for just a little bit. Here we go. Charlie, you're on Comic Book Radio with Andy Smith here. What's your question or comment?
Howdy. First time ever doing something like this.
Nice.
Just want to say, really loving the show, and it's been real helpful. And for Andy, I just wanted to ask, sir, what would you say is the hardest part of what you had to do in your time in the industry, penciling, inking? Obviously, it's different between times and jobs, I understand. But that's my question.
I mean, all the hard stuff really goes back to just the beginning when I was first starting out interpreting the script from the writer, because I didn't have the gusto, you could say, like, so my mentor in the Kubert school throughout third year was Bart Sears. And Bart's mindset from day one when he broke in the business was, and this was Joe Kubert's mindset too, so it's probably where he got it, was once you get the script, it's yours. It's not the writer's anymore, it's yours. So if you want to change stuff, you change stuff, as long as it benefits the story. And it took me a while to get to that point, like years. So in the beginning, even if what the writer was describing that he wanted drawn didn't make sense, and I just viscerally knew it didn't make sense, I would go out of my way to try to make it work, as much as my gut was telling me, don't change it. You know that that's not going to work. And I think you kind of do have to, once again, know your ability, know what you can do, and trust your gut. And, take those chances and stuff too. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, I probably would have, taken some more chances out of the gate and stuff in regards to if I did see something in a script and it just didn't feel right, and just be like, nah, man, I got to do it this way, and just see how the dice roll, when the editor gets it, and what the writer even says. Other than that, there are still moments that I'll come across something I've never drawn before, and it's not like an anxiety panic attack or anything, but it's still kind of like, oh man, I've never really drawn this before. And luckily with the internet and everything, it's a lot easier to look for stuff to kind of get the juices flowing visually, whereas back then it was all about building up the morgue file, which is basically a filing cabinet of folders that are like cars, and you just clip out cars from magazines. So people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, would go to their morgue file and open it up and be like, oh, what am I looking for? Ooh, this type of plane. Oh, here it is. I'm trying to remember Wally Wood, if you know who that artist was. Fantastic artist. He had a great morgue file, and I cannot remember, Art might know if he's still watching, who got it after Wally was gone, but somebody, I think, got his morgue file.
I've definitely seen some of his art before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, And if you're staring at a blank page and you have that, it's always tough because it's a blank page to get going. Just grab a scrap sheet of paper and just start scribbling stuff. And then eventually, within 10-15 minutes, that'll just get you going. So
I might have to try that over graph paper. I've been doing graph paper, and it's been a it's been a struggle. But
I wouldn't use
Yeah.
graph paper. I mean, I don't know what you're using it for, but I remember
it's
trying it.
trying to. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, I remember as a kid, getting graph paper thinking, ooh, it's got, it's just 1/4 inch, whatever squares, light non-photo blue, thinking, oh, this will save me time. And I was like, not really, because it's good for panel borders. But other than that, not much stuff I draw on panels are straight up and down. So,
Well, I'm using it mostly for paneling right now. Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at. Well,
Sure.
thank you though. I really do appreciate that, sir.
Yeah.
I guess it's just funny you mentioned the morgue. I imagine you got quite a bit of, maybe got some weird looks from people being like printing out stuff, and it's like, why is he printing out a bunch of cars, pictures of babes, and maybe like dead animals?
So
Not trying to imply
never
anything.
had to do that. But one, the beautiful thing now is with my phone next to my desk, whenever I have to look something up, I just go right to the phone and Google it. But
Yep.
and I know Bud Root will not mind me telling this story. So Bud Root, if you know Bud, he's great at drawing the ladies. Until he got a smartphone, and I've known Bud since 2005. Until he got a smartphone, he uses reference, big time. And, he doesn't hide the fact that he uses reference, but he doesn't use it from the standpoint of, oh, here's this picture of this woman. I'm just going to literally copy the exact pose. He's more of a Frankenstein type where he's like, oh, I like the way this part looks or this lighting looks, and uses different photos to compose one figure. So you'll never look at Bud's stuff and be like, oh, I know where he got that figure from. So we'd go to conventions, and obviously if you're getting commission from Bud Root at a convention, it's always Cave Woman or some She-Hulk, some chick.
Yeah.
And he would pull out of his portfolio, I am not kidding, a stack of 8.5 by 11 that's about that thick of reference. And some of the reference was pretty hardcore. I'll just put it that way. And he'd go, hey, you want to flip through this? And I'm like, yeah.
Fair
under
enough,
the table.
man.
I'm not going to put this on top of my table.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
But now he's got a smartphone, so he can leave all that at home.
He just
Well,
breaks
there
out
you
a
go.
porno mag. He's like, it's reference.
Oh man.
That's right.
Oh, in the middle of a con. well, thank you again, sir. I really do appreciate it, and looking forward to whatever comes next. And I hope you gentlemen
Thank
have
you.
a lovely evening. Take
You
care.
too.
You too,
Take
man.
it easy. All right, we got Travis in the back. What's up, Travis?
What's up,
You're on
Travis?
with Andy Smith. What's your
Can you
question
hear
or
me?
comment for Andy? Yep.
Yeah.
You're coming in loud and clear.
Andy, what's the most frustrating thing for you to illustrate where it makes you want to pull your hair out?
What are you talking about? I did that years ago. Probably cars, which is funny because I
Okay.
said, when I was a little kid, I would draw cars, but I only drew side views.
Mhm.
Drawing cars it depends on your style. And unfortunately, I have a style that I like to call stylized realism. So it's not photorealistic by any means with the figures and stuff, but it's still, realistic. It's not like Mike Rowingo, who was cartoony, Joe Madureira, Humberto Ramos, guys like that. So
Right.
because I draw that way, I can't get away with drawing stylized box cars, which are, you see artists who can get away with drawing a car, which is like it's a rectangle with another rectangle on top, two spheres or ovals, whatever, for the tires in perspective, with a little bit of curve here and there. So throughout my whole career, it's like, all right, I gotta draw a car. So for instance, I did a Hawkman job about 20 years ago, and I still collect die-cast cars. You can see some behind me. I've got other ones. And I had a Polaroid camera because it was before smartphones. And unless the writer specifically said, I want this type of car, which has really never happened, I would be like, okay, what die-cast do I have? Sweet, I'd hold it, take a picture of it, and then set the picture next to my desk, and from the rules of learning perspective and basic shapes and stuff, draw the car. Now, I'll be honest, if I have to draw cars now, I have a beautiful program called Google SketchUp, which is a 3D modeling program. I don't have to build the cars. I can go to the Google SketchUp warehouse online, type in whatever type of car, download the model, position it in any angle I want, camera angle I want, insert it into the page, and then print it out in blue. And then this is what I hate. I see lots of artists that do this, but they literally don't add anything to the SketchUp model, because you can print it out in a high resolution line art basically on the page, so you don't even have to ink it. And I don't do that. I would print it out in non-photo blue, real light blue, because I would pencil over top of it, add little details, scuff it up, whatever. Then I would ink it. But that's how I do it now. So
Pretty cool.
But buildings,
And then,
it's like, oh, go ahead.
And then what about, are you going to do First Man number 3 or just Core Draft pretty much?
Core Draft Volume 2 is definitely next up.
Okay.
I do want to do Volume 3 of First Man, because it was always meant to be 3 to finish the overall story arc, even though they can be read individually. So I do want to do that. And my buddy Rob Snyder that I work with on it, I mean, he's got a pretty full plate as it is with, his regular gig and stuff. So yeah, that's something I definitely want to do. So.
Oh, awesome. That was it. That was all the questions. Thank you for answering my questions, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Travis Parrick. Jeez Louise.
No worries.
Thank you so much, Travis. Have a great night.
You're welcome, Pete. All right, you too.
All right. And taking a quick look at your campaign, looks like you got a backer. So you're at 40 backers now at $3,498. So $2 away from $3,500. There you go.
Thank you very much.
And the link
that
is
comes in. Trailer's 38 seconds. It doesn't tell you more than what I'm going to say, but basically it comes in a digital format as well. It comes in, it's going to be saddle stitched, which is a fancy way of saying it's going to be stapled, not perfect bound. Perfect bound does look nice, but saddle stitch will let you lay it flat, so you could either scan it if you didn't want to get the digital version and you want to practice inking. You could scan the pages, make your own blue lines and print them out, or you could practice inking the way I had to, which is lay vellum, which is a thicker tracing paper, over top and ink it that way. Or if you just are, want to see different pages from different projects I've worked on in the full pencil format to kind of get a sense for what what my pencils look like. And there's that.
That's great. That's a good idea too, in terms of practicing inking with this kind of stuff, because it's different when you're looking at the complete produced page,
right,
where there's everything else already there, and especially if you're just starting out, it's going to be way more difficult for you to kind of dissect it and break it down when you don't really know what to look for,
right,
or what you should even be seeing.
It's that, and it's also, it's 2023. I can find pencil pages online from different artists, but they're usually low-res JPEGs. So it might look good on your screen, but after you click Save Image As and you open it up and blow it up, it becomes a mess. So I think doing a book that is high-res images, and then once again the digital format is also going to be high-res, so you could export the pages into Clip Studio or whatever if you're a digital guy.
Yeah. Let's see a couple questions from the chat, and then we'll close down the show. Jefferson Roswell says, Andy, did Joe Kubert ever mention to you his work on adapting the Bible for DC in the 70s?
No. In fact, I didn't even learn about that Treasury edition until after I graduated is when I actually found it. and bought it. So I didn't even know about it. During school, when I went there, he was working on his creator-owned book called Tor, and he was doing it for Epic, which was an offshoot of Marvel for creator-owned stuff.
Yep.
So he would bring in the Tor pages for us to look at and stuff.
And Brian asks, Andy, what was your favorite comic you read or bought in the last week?
The last week, I was at a convention. What was it? This past weekend, I went to a small con just to look around, and I picked up actually some back issues of Power Man and Iron Fist that I had as a kid. And then at some point, I did a purge and I got rid of a bunch of stuff. And I picked them up because it was some of Dennis Cowan's first work for Marvel. And I always loved Dennis's work on the stuff. And I picked up 3 issues that were $1 a piece that it just brought back that I could just see in my head clear as day when I bought them off the stand in, the early 80s.
It's a time machine.
Yeah, so it was that. I mean, I haven't bought... I'm trying to think. The last new book I bought was Justice League vs. Godzilla, #1. I dug it. I'll probably... I think it's 6 issues, so I'll probably get it unless it takes a turn for the worse. But the first issue was good. I like the guy that's drawing it, so...
And then some guy says, just got here. What's left to do on Cordrath?
Wait for the printer to email me and say, guess what's coming to your doorstep? Because the books are at the printer.
There you go.
So Dennis is working on volume 2 right now. We're already looking at, or I'm already looking at some pages that he's written. I'm actually going to, I always do a parody ad. So if you don't know, I do a parody ad in every book I do. It's kind of like a throwback to those old ads from Hostess and stuff. So he just wrote the parody ad for volume 2, so I'll probably actually be drawing that next week. And I've got 2 covers drawn for volume 2 already. I got the homage cover, and that obviously homages a famous cover from back in the day. And I got the regular cover drawn as well. So already hard at work on #2.
Awesome. Very nice. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching tonight. We're going to be closing down the show right here. I'm going to be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern. My guest is Zachary. I believe the name to say, his last name is Marois.
Oh, damn. I
Maybe
totally
it's
pronounced
different.
it wrong.
I don't know.
I said Zachary. I think I said Marois or Morose.
Maybe it is. I really don't know. Maybe
I don't
Marois is it? Marois? I don't know.
Well,
Maybe I'm making
I'm
it
glad
fancier
you're
than it
having
needs
him
to
on.
be. But yeah, I'm going to have him on the show tomorrow night, and he can let me know how close I was to pronouncing his
I'll have
last
to
name
watch.
correctly. But thank you guys for being here. Alterna's got a winter apparel and merch campaign, if you haven't noticed right here. We've got hoodies and blankets and all that kind of good stuff available. Check it out. Really, really cool stuff. Full color, all over print hoodies. And then the big blankets, 60 by 80, nice and soft fleece blankets. So check that out. That's on alternacomics.com/winter, and that's going to be available up until November 27th. Other than that, Andy, before we go, where can they find you, and what's coming up next down the line for you that you want them to pay attention to?
Well, it's just at Andy Smith Art for pretty much everything. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, I think, is Andy Smith Comic Book Artist. And you'll see this face when you search on YouTube. So go like and subscribe to that channel, because I always do... every Tuesday, I drop a book look where I pull a book off my shelf. It's just the camera, so you don't have to see this. And I go through the book page by page, and if it's still available, I post the link down below so you can buy it. And if it's not, search eBay, I guess. And I try to do time-lapse video drawings that I post once a week and stuff on the YouTube channel. And right now, it's nice and tight. The comic book pencils of Andy Smith. That's me. 52 pages. There's also a sketchbook that I'm bringing back. It's one of my favorite ones that I did. It was originally 64 pages. I'm adding 20 pages of new content to it. So go check that out. And then Core Draft Volume 2 coming in spring of 2024.
Man, wonderful, wonderful. Before we go, I have one last final question for you. Should be a nice, easy, I think, question to answer. Your favorite pencil to use?
You know, it's funny. It's a .05 mechanical pencil, but it has to be. Do you want to see it? Because I can grab it real fast. If you
Yeah,
really
yeah. I use like the cheap little Bic mechanical pencil things too.
No, it's
But
it's a .05 Pentel mechanical, but they come in different colors. I gotta have black, and this is when like I said, Bart was my mentor. Bart Sears was my mentor in my third year of the Kubert School, and at that point, I was whatever using pencils, whatever I was using. But he was such a mentor from the standpoint of really helping me progress and stuff. You're kind of like a sponge. I was like 19, 20, and I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, he's using that black mechanical pen. I'm going to try that. And that's it. I start every drawing with a lead holder, which just holds a big fat piece of lead. It's a HB. I don't sharpen it, so it's nice and blunt. And I just get all the shapes and stuff down. And then I use this, and I kind of refer to it as sculpting, where you start with the big piece of clay, and then you work down to the details, and that's what this is for. So
that's how you make them nice and tight.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. All right, everybody, this was great. Thank you so much, Andy, for your time tonight and for
You got it, man.
everything. It was a great
Thank you.
show. Tons of great advice, tons of awesome experiences that you recounted. It's amazing. Everybody, go check out Nice and Tight Comic Book Pencils by Andy Smith. This is on Indiegogo, and it's got 29 days left. 40 backers on board and $2 away from 3,500. Go check it out. Links are in the description for the show on both Andy's YouTube page and Andy's Indiegogo. Everyone, hey, and there's our T-Bear. Look at that.
Good night, Art.
Good night, Art. Good night, everybody else. Thank you guys so much for being here. Again, I'll see you all tomorrow. Until then, have a great night and an even better tomorrow. Take it easy, guys.
Bye-bye.